Programming. I'm your host, Mary Gerasi, and today we have fine artist Cheryl Kuck with us. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, Mary. It's great to be here.
Not only a fine artist, an amazing person, a world traveler who's here to share her story and her artwork with us today, and we appreciate it.
Well, I think that art is something that certainly you can learn, but I think the real passion for it is something that you are gifted with. It's kind of like opening your mouth and having beautiful music come out. All right, you're not responsible for it originally. You can hone it, but you're not responsible for it. And it's kind of an awesome procedure because you are one of the few people who has the joy and the fear of taking something from nothing, creating something where there was just a blank page before.
How did you get started in the arts? Was it something you knew at an early age? Did you find out at a later age? Tell me your story, how you became the amazing fine artist that you are today.
Well, I always had a passion for the arts. My mother was a very talented woman, and she was a dress designer. And she was a very busy woman and never had time to show me anything artistic. And in fact, they were dead set against me ever becoming an artist. I had scholarships offered to me, which they turned down. I am so old that when I was growing up, you could become a teacher, you could become a nurse, or you could become a secretary, or you could get married. Now, those were your options. And the thought of me ending up in Greenwich Village wearing leotards and starving to death just did not appeal to my parents.
I don't think any parents would find that appealing.
So they discouraged that. And I always did something on the periphery. I went into education. And although my education is in English, the minute every school that I went to found out that I was also an artist, I ended up teaching art.
How did you become an artist in spite of your parents saying, no, 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 no? How did you do it?
Well, I studied and I worked continuously. It isn't that I studied with great artists. I had one or two great artists like Sarkisian turn me down because he said, I will tell you something that's very important. You have enough talent that if your perspective is off, God and the world will still approve of you.
Wow.
But if your perspective is right and you don't have the talent, neither God nor the critics will like you. So, so he said,
amazing thing to say.
I'm such a strong artist myself that I have a tendency to turn out little copies of myself. Wow. And I remember watching Judy Garland in an interview where they asked her if her daughter had taken singing lessons, and she said, never. She either has the talent or she doesn't have it. But along with that talent has to be the passion and the interest. I mean, you read every book you can get a hold of, you study with every artist that you can study with without diminishing your own style. I have a lot of artist friends who take endless amounts of courses, and that's a wonderful thing, but they're caught up in the moment of it, and they're diverted from the true gift that they have. I paint in the large the same way as a miniaturist would paint a miniature painting. So it doesn't matter what size I'm working on, I still like detail. I'm a perfectionist, and I don't want to paint blobs that people can only see from a distance. I want them to be able to come up close and personal to it. Dipping and redipping constantly here to get all those little hairs now. Over and over and over again, over and over again. So I must do this maybe 1,000 times in the course of a day. By the time that you get the rest of the animal painted like this, it looks like this. Right now it's very obvious, you can see it a lot, but there'll be more white paint and more little gray ink going in there until it's just very, very light, and you see just the tiny little hairs or a suggestion. Once I've touched the skin of an elephant, I have to paint not only what I saw, but what I felt. And I have to try and get that translated. I mean, I was the little kid who drew my own paper dolls and designed my own paper clothes and drew them out and put them on.
Very early.
Very, very early. And I think that I credit a great deal of my interest, enthusiasm, and my striving for perfection to my high school art teacher. And my high school art teacher, Natalie Brown, in faraway Ferndale, Michigan, gave me the first low grade I'd ever had in my life. And I always felt that I was talented. I certainly had more ability than anyone else in my class. And I was going to college and I was getting good grades. And she gave me a C in art. And I was horrified, very upset, very angry, and came to her and said, look at my projects, look at this. I did this and you gave them a better grade, and why? She said, because you didn't give it your very best. They gave it their very best, and I graded them according to their abilities. You could have done so much better, but you coasted. And I've never coasted since.
Wow, you've had so many amazing mentors, it sounds like, in your life.
That's right.
So you went to high school, you were already exploring your art, you had scholarship possibilities, you went to college. What happened next? You went into the teaching profession?
I actually went and applied for a part-time job while I was working as a fashion illustrator for a department store chain. I ended up being an art director. From there, I was hired to go into the fledgling fashion merchandising program and ended up the director of 55 merchandising schools.
Wow.
And I designed all of their curriculum. And then I had children, and they were growing up, so I went back to teaching school. And I taught in the first open school system in the United States in Westland, Michigan, and Eisenhower Elementary. And then my husband and I started going overseas. He is a professional wildlife photographer, and we just decided that we would follow his dream for a while and give our children a good education at the same time.
How did that change your artwork, going overseas with your husband as a wildlife photographer? Did you start to change? Did you move in a new direction?
Well, actually, you know, I always considered myself an artist. It wasn't what I did all the time. But I considered myself an artist first and foremost. For instance, now I'm a writer. I'm an arts writer. That's what I do. My passion is for the arts in general. So that's an offshoot of what I do. And I've been the only community arts writer for Sunbelt Publishing and the Brandon News for the past 15 years.
So you're always recreating yourself as a typical artist should.
That's right. That's
amazing.
right.
But when you went overseas, now we have many, many, many photos, amazing photos of your adventures. We have many beautiful photographs, and we have many paintings that kind of parallel the things you saw. The elephant eating at your table. I mean, just amazing life's experience. How did that change your art? Did it change your art? Were you painting like that before you left? Tell me about that experience.
No, I was really teaching school before I left. And before the children came along, my husband said, marry me and I'll take you away from all of this. And I really thought it was kind of a joke. I didn't expect him to put me in the middle of the African bush, you know, but there I learned so much about life and living from the people, from the countryside, and I think whenever you travel, your vision of the world changes completely. I mean, I was a city girl, and I had never been out in the bush anywhere, and it was a whole new experience to me, and it opened up vistas. I have always seen the beauty in people. I, on the other hand, like to portray the nobility of all God's creatures. That's human, and that's in the animal world. And they have a nobility, and each one is totally individual. If I do like two dolphin, or if you see the lion cubs with their mother, the mother is got her mouth open and she is roaring at them gently, and one is very passive sitting on her shoulder, and the other one is playing an upside down with the paws up in the air, because that happens, and it would happen in a human family at the same time. So there are many similar traits and characteristics. My husband is a wildlife photographer, and he loves wildlife. And so I became interested in wildlife. I had never painted wildlife before. I mean, I painted portraits of Thoreau and Hemingway and people like that for Kent State University and so on and so forth, but I had never done wildlife. And I would go with him out in the bush all alone, and I'm sketching, and he's doing the photography. Then when I would finish a piece, like my lions,
oh, beautiful piece,
you know, where you can see the detail, but that's not a total realistic piece. As a lot of artists, they graph things. They take a photograph, then they graph it. And if an ear is this big or so on, and you get a perfect reproduction of it, which is something that the critics really don't like. So this is totally free. So I'm doing a field sketch, and I take all my field sketches and his photographs, and I hang them above my drawing table on a clothesline. And then I look at it, and I think about it, and I sit back, and then whatever happens, happens.
Can you explain that process? I know that's probably an impossible question, but it just sounds like there's an incorporation of a spiritual level, a visual level, a psychic ability, something. It just sounds like you're not satisfied with photo replay or photo duplication. Like, you seem to have a very rapier way of transforming your emotions, what you see and what you feel into your art. Is that accurate? That's what I felt when I saw your work.
Well, that's kind of like the way you're interviewing me. I can feel your empathy. I can feel it. Yeah. In other words, when I'm painting animals, I want the human side of them to show, where we can empathize with them. They have feelings too. They play, they mate, they need food, they get hungry. And I try to show that in those paintings. Of the people, I want to get to the heart of the person. And I never could be just a portrait artist. I have a friend who's a portrait artist, and I say, how can you do that? Because I like to paint the character. I want all the wrinkles, and I want
flavor.
every flavor, the character of the person. And she said, oh, it's very easy. I charge an extra $100 for every wrinkle they want removed. I said, I can't do that. I absolutely can't do that. But my African pieces, what I started there was I decided that every time I picked up a paintbrush, I wanted it to benefit something. In other words, I believe that the gift that I have is a natural gift. I can only thank God for it. So I have to give it back. The African people, went to help needy tribes. We worked with them, and we showed them how to do things with the crafts that they were already doing, and to market them so that they could receive hard currency for them. So where there were starving children before, there were no longer starving children. If it was animals, I became the Florida representative of the East African Wildlife Society. If it was animals, it was a percentage of everything that I did went to help preserve endangered species and wildlife. Now, with I am doing a mural right now. I'm starting a mural. I'm not quite finished with it yet, but the mural is about Noah's Ark. And I was asked by a church to do this. And I am painting my vision. I did a sketch, as you said, I did a sketch. And the sketch was not what happened. Once I started painting on the wall, the gift or the ideas, what is flowing through me, came out in an entirely different way. So it's not an easy process. I can't say, here's this piece, and we're going to photograph that, and we're going to make 100 or 1,000 limited editions of it, or G-clays, and we're going to make a lot of money with it. No, the painting came first. Well, one of my favorite tools is this really high-tech tool here called a push pin. And that, when I can't get the hairs that I want and the fine detail with my fine nib of a pen, I use a little push pin. So that's one of my secret high-tech things that I use. And it doesn't matter, any miniaturist will tell you, it doesn't matter whether you're using glasses or not using glasses, you still end up using a magnifying mirror for fine detail if you do fine detail. The only problem is your eyes get adjusted to looking through a magnifying mirror, and it gets pretty hard to save your eyesight after a while. You can tell which is my favorite palette knife. All right, that's really easy. This is probably as big as I ever go, even on a large service. Well, I use a sea sponge a great deal, and it has to be a natural sponge, and I have them in different sizes. This just happens to be the one I've been using for the wave and water technique, and it helps that aura of realism. All of this sponging goes in there. It's never really very wet. It's only just slightly damp. Sometimes it's not dampened at all. It's just dipped in a pool of ink or watercolor. So it's only slightly damp. So you get all this wonderful texture with it. This is every child's favorite. They cannot understand what this is. It's a very simple thing. It's called a kneadable eraser because you can knead it into different shapes. And instead of taking an eraser like you have on a pencil or somewhere, and you have to erase whatever is that size, this one you can manipulate and maneuver into tiny little points. So if you have just a tiny little speck that you want to pull up or pick off, you can do that with a kneadable eraser. All of the products that I use outside of ink and watercolor and acrylics and watercolor pencil are water medium additives, flow improvers. This is a glaze, and it doesn't really matter. People say certain things matter. It doesn't really matter. What matters is if you know how to use them. Artists will use anything at their command to create what they want. You'll take pieces of paper and pieces of foil and you'll crinkle them up, and any simple thing. As I said, just like the push pin, it's just a simple thing, but it works.
Tell me about the eggs. How did you explore this medium?
Well, true artists will paint on anything that will sit still for 2 minutes. It doesn't matter if you're a tattoo artist or you're into fabric art or whatever, and this is a lovely palette. It's almost like painting on masonite.
Wow.
You know, and there's nothing in it. They're all
hollowed out.
They're all hollowed out. The yolk is removed. This one here, there are sparkles on the inside, but this is the upside down. And this, for instance, this shows the African coastal people were spear fishermen. And along the Indian Ocean, they have a lot of the same creatures that we have in Florida, including dolphins and manatees. It's amazing.
Manatees, really?
Yes, the West Indian manatee.
That's right. I have heard it referred to as that before.
But it's a very hard surface. The ostrich egg will withstand over 400 pounds. We have painted so far probably around 1,700 ostrich eggs for various people. We're the only people in the world that custom paint them to your order. In other words, we've painted dog portraits, we do company logos, we do horses, we do any kind of wildlife, whatever people want, and we give them a message on a happy birthday, happy anniversary, or so on, and we ship them all over. But they're one of a kind. Each piece is one of a kind.
Not duplicated.
Not duplicated.
Not airbrush, not
airbrush,
decal.
by hand. Pen and ink and brush.
How's that business? Do people adore these eggs? I mean, the detail on that is amazing. Every wrinkle, every bit of that feather, just amazing detail.
It's very hard to break the egg. As I said, they'll withstand over 400 pounds of pressure. Occasionally it does happen. If it hits a funny bump because it's hollow, you know.
It'll explode.
it'll crack probably. But we have had a lot of repeat business for people that just were devastated if their ostrich egg broke, and so wanted to have the same thing painted over again. It's very hard when it's a freehand to do that, so we've had people glue pieces together and tell us, you know, and we look back in our paperwork and see what it is and so on and so forth. But for instance, one like this, where every inch is painted, then there's a school of fish there. A little message would just go right down on the bottom in that. So, but to remember everything that was on this egg would be very difficult.
They're so special. They're so unique.
They are unique.
Must be the message. I have the only one-of-a-kind ostrich egg for me, the way I wanted it, and no one will ever have it again.
We have painted many tops of wedding cakes.
Painted wedding cakes?
Painted the tops of wedding cakes. Two giraffe with their necks intertwined instead of a plastic bride and groom. We had hugging frogs. People love frogs. They had their pet dog on top of an ostrich. Whatever people wanted, but a lot of wedding cake toppers, and we even had a topper piece holder made so that would fit right down in the top of the wedding cake. Two swans are very popular. Their heads form a heart, and then their wedding invitation was inscribed on the back of that.
Wow, you go all out.
Oh, we do.
How did you come up with this? This is an amazing thing to have,
well,
such a one-of-a-kind thing.
I tell you, I have to credit my husband with this. We were sitting in our art gallery. I've been in the gallery business for over 20 years, first at the Holiday Inn Crowne Plaza Hotel at Sable Park, and then the only theme park gallery at Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay. And we put some plain ostrich eggs like this out in just for atmosphere, out in a basket. And it was a quiet day, believe it or not, at the gallery. And my husband said, "Have you ever tried painting on one of those?" And I said, "You know, I never really have." And he said, "Do you think you could do it?" And I said, "I won't know unless I try." And then 1,700 eggs later, you could see it was a successful venture.
Now, you've run across many, many, many famous people throughout your journeys, China, the Middle East, worldwide. And is it accurate of me to say some of these eggs have gone to some pretty famous people?
Oh, they have.
Jack Hanna?
Jack Hanna is one of them. We have I did a charging elephant for his, and that's in his home, his brand new home, which was featured on an HGTV special. I have done eggs for the Bush family. I have done eggs for race car drivers and football players. I mean, the list is endless. I can't think of everyone's name.
Yes.
But Warren Moon was a football player. There are just so many people that we have done eggs for because Warren Moon, for instance, he wanted a football helmet with a logo on it for all of the teams that he'd played on, and I don't know how many teams he played on, 10 or more or something like that.
So you did that,
yeah.
Special custom design.
That's right. Now, my husband also carves eggs, and what we do, for instance, if someone wanted an Indian carved, we would carve out the shape of the Indian, and I would paint this exact same thing inside the egg.
Wow.
So you would be looking into the egg.
It sounds like your husband's fairly artistic and creative
well,
as well.
He's a wildlife photographer. He carves eggs.
An artist in his own right.
He certainly is, and we both write, so.
Wow, so it's a wonderful artistic relationship.
It is, except when he's critical.
Nobody wants that.
Well, he's got an unerring photographer's eye. If I'm doing a wildlife painting, I can be working on that all day long, and he can come in and he'll say, "No, no, no," and I'll say, "What's wrong?" And he'll say, "That ear is not just quite right. It should flop over that way." And of course, it's not the criticism that's bad, it's the fact that he's always right.
Oh, gotta hate that. But it sounds like you share. It sounds like you share. You listen to him, he's listening to you, and you've had a very fluid, amazing relationship, which parlayed itself into several businesses.
It certainly has, and I often think of the interview that I saw with George Burns after Gracie had died, and they interviewed him, and he showed he had a watch fob, a golden watch fob that he wore with the wedding ring on it. He could not bear to have her buried with the wedding ring in the casket. And so he wears it every day. He said, people today don't know what married is. Gracie and I got up in the morning, we had breakfast together, I zipped up her dress, she straightened my tie. We went to work, we worked together all day long. We came home at night, we ate dinner, I unzipped her dress, she undid my tie. He said, that's married. So my husband and I have been married for a long time, and
not going to say I like this lady.
we have a wonderful working relationship, and we've both grown. I didn't think I could paint wildlife, but his love of wildlife started me painting wildlife. He was the one actually that encouraged me to do more with my art, because he said, God didn't give you this gift so you could sit on it. So
right. Another mentor in your life.
That's right. So he got me very, very busy doing more of the fine art than any commercial side of art.
We're going to have to wind up, and I would hate to end this conversation. We could probably go on all day. You're a fascinating, amazing, spiritual person. I really enjoyed our time. I'm going to ask you one of those Barbara Walter questions everybody, used to make fun out of on Saturday Night Live. If you were a salad dressing, no, I won't ask that
No,
one.
please don't.
I'd have to be low fat. I'm on a diet. With all the amazing talent, gifts, passion, enthusiasm, I'd like you to pick one word that sums up who you are or what your mission is. Just one word.
Well, art is the word.
Art.
Art is the word. It's the joy of beauty and the love of people, really, and all of creation.
You're definitely a spirit in the world. I could see that.
I am, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to use these gifts in any way to benefit whoever I've been able to.
I got two feelings, having been raised in Europe as a military brat. I'm wondering if Michelangelo, laying on his back up at the top of the Sistine Chapel for 3 years, in fact, he was up there so long his socks actually rotted on his feet. That's how long he was up there. Might have felt the same way, because all of his work was in celebration of God and the Bible stories. And then I look at the eggs and I'm thinking Fabergé, like another take on it. So it was nice to be around you today and able to share your story and your artwork.
Thank you so much. I just hope to have many, many more years of being able to be a contributing member of society through the gifts that God's given me.
And we hope the same for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.